Good morning, Eleanor. Hello, Mrs. Fluffy Pants. Little morning bath, and we'll have some treats later on. Oh. I have to go to work. What is that little noise you're making? What? 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 I know, he's like, Dad, leave me alone. We're trying to sleep. Wow. All right, you sleep. I'm going to go to my pottery class. Love you. All right, that's getting a little crazy. Hey guys, how are you? Welcome back to my channel. It's me, Steven. I'm at Taco Bell near the airport. Not a surprise to anybody. So welcome to Vlogtober day 14. I can't believe the month is already half over. First off, let me apologize if my voice gets a little thick or I start to clear my throat or cough a little bit. I do apologize. I'm not sick, but does anyone remember the fun fact that I'm allergic to cats? What, Steven? You have 2 cats? You used to have 3? And you're allergic to them? What do you mean? Yeah, and I was living in a teeny little studio with 3 cats at one point. Yeah, fun fact, I'm allergic to cats. When I first met Buddy, if you remember back, what is it? It'll be 5 years later in November. When I first met Buddy, I fell in love with him immediately. And my desire for his health and safety and comfort and happiness and well-being was omnipresent. It superseded everything else in my life. For some reason, that cat just got right in my heart. So when he would stay over and when he started being in the house more often, I would take a Claritin morning, noon, and night when I was at home, and I would take one morning and night when I was away on a trip, just to kind of keep it in my system, so that I could just handle and survive being in the house with my cats. It worked really well, but if I were in the house for a couple of days in a row, the lockdown was absolute misery. But if I'm in the house for a couple of days in a row with the cats, I start to get very thick right here in my chest. And even today, it starts to get that way. But I no longer take Claritin. I no longer take an allergy medication, because after 4.5, 5 years, I seem to have acclimated to having cats in my house. So I'm not sure if that acclimation is broad spectrum, covering all cats, because I really haven't been around other cats. I would hope so, because like I love cats. But my cats, I am almost normal around. But after 2 or 3 days at home, I do get a little thick. So that's like 2.5 minutes of me talking about my allergies. How exciting is this channel? All right, so today is the 14th. It is a Friday, I think. Yeah. I have a trip tomorrow. I thought my report time was 8:30 p.m. for some reason. Nope, it is 8:30 a.m. So I have just gone to Walmart to pick up some things I needed for my trip. I need denture tablets and denture adhesive. Do I get sexier every minute? So I needed a couple things for my trip. So I went out there. I'm at Taco Bell now, and I realized I really had nothing to share with you outside of waking the cats up this morning. Nothing happened. My pottery class was today, but I wasn't really motivated to make anything. I just kind of futzed around, glazed a few pieces. So nothing happened at all today. But thank goodness for Vlogtober, I still have some questions in my comment section. You guys have actually asked a couple additional questions, and I left a couple there that I wasn't quite sure how to address. So I figured today is going to be another Q&A. All right, so let's get down to answering some questions. Alrighty, so William, I think it's William 3D Artist, asked 2 questions. I believe I have the gist of his questions correct, but William, if I'm wrong, please correct me in the comment section. First question can I just go home if I don't live in base, for example, at the end of a trip rather than go all the way back to my base? I believe that's the question. And the answer would be yes, on the very rare occasion. If you have the last leg of your pairing is a deadhead, meaning they're just repositioning you back to base, you're not going to work that flight, you can call crew scheduling and ask to be released for what we call an alternate deadhead. So if they say, yes, we release you from your trip, your next trip is whatever, you're now on your own. It's up to you, and it's your responsibility to get where you have to be, but also to be where you have to be to start your next trip. So it's up to you to move and to, go where you're going. So for example, a few weeks ago, I had a double deadhead, 2 of them, from Orlando to Chicago and Chicago to Las Vegas. I could have called crew scheduling and said, hey, can I be released for an alternate deadhead? They could have said yes, and I could have just looked for a flight on my airline or Southwest or somebody else that went right from Orlando to Las Vegas rather than going all the way to Chicago first. So that could be an option. But also, if you're on reserve or we're short on reserves or crew scheduling sees some potential for a problem to happen in terms of staffing, they might deny your alternate deadhead and say, no, I'm sorry, we're not going to release you. So there is a possibility of that. If you're a line holder, especially a fairly senior line holder, and there are other people who are deadheading with you, you'll more than likely be released. So yes, there are times you can go right home rather than going to your base, but it's pretty rare. And as a line holder in my airline, in Las Vegas, we don't get a lot of deadheads, especially go home day. So yeah. The other question, what was the other question? Oh, goodness. So I believe the gist of William's other question was, can we work many, many days in a row, say 10, 12, 14 days in a row in order to have more time off, like a larger span of time off? And the answer is yes. Yes, you can stack trips. That's what it's called. Now, you want to make sure you have legal time off between trips. For example, we can't work 7 days in a row. We can only work up to 6 days in a row. So when you're stacking trips, you want to make sure that you have a 24-hour layover in the middle of a pairing or something so that you actually can be legal to keep on working. But lots and lots and lots of people stack their trips so they can have time off. One of my coworkers is based in Las Vegas. He lives in Poland. He lives in Poland. He loves it there. But he wants to have like 2 weeks in Poland. So he'll stack all of his trips and he'll work back to back to back. And then be able to just jet off to Poland and spend a couple weeks at home. So yes, you can work a lot and then have a lot of time off. That's not my kind of style. I ideally want 2 or 3 days off between each trip. So I'm not a stacker, but I'm also not a hustler. I'm fine with my basic schedule, but let's see what the next question is. Yes, I'm sorry, I'm filming this whole video in my car. I apologize. But I think it's Dr. Duran that asked the next question, which is truly terrifying, is what happens if you forget to bid? Horrifying question. So if you're already on reserve, it doesn't really affect your life that much, unless there are particular days you really, really needed off. And at that point, it's really up to the scheduling gods. Years ago, when I first started, you could swap your reserve days. And I've heard somebody say that they did that and it worked for them, but I don't know if that actually is true anymore. But if you're a line holder, especially a senior line holder, and you're used to getting a schedule that you want, you're on reserve. Bam, you're on reserve. And you're most likely going to be on the least desired reserve. Like for me, I know that I'd be reserve A, which is when crew scheduling can call me between midnight and 10 a.m. I like to sleep in. I don't like to be called at 3 or 4 in the morning. Excuse me. So I would go on reserve if I forgot to bid. You also can run the risk of short bidding, which is when you think you only have to bid for maybe 15, 20 lines, and you were the 21st in line for in a line. and surprise, you're now in reserve. So you can short bid, which is not bidding enough lines, and also suffer the same fate as just forgetting to bid completely. I remember being brand new, and a woman who is like a 5'2", I'm a 7'1", so she has been here for a very long time. She was in the crew room crying. She had forgotten to bid. So yeah, it can be traumatic, and you apparently only do it once in your life, because you're so traumatized that you just never do it again. I know that kind of leads into another question from someone. Let me read the questions. So I think it's Jason that asked a great question, is what type of lines do I usually get? My first choice when I bid, my last choice, or somewhere in the middle. Now, 9 times out of 10, I get my first choice, which sounds really luxurious, right? But the reality is I bid very realistically. I don't fantasy bid for lines I know I'm not going to keep. Yeah, and there's all sorts of criteria as to what people determine as being very aspirational lines. So they're looking for high credit, soft credit trips, you know. And so I bid for lines I know that I'm going to keep. Also, that things that feature elements that I want. Like, I like a really nice long layover in a city that I want to go to. I prefer starting my trip with a red eye, and those two things sort of usually make a line that's a trip that's not terribly high credit. So it's not really that desirable by most people, but I love it. So I typically get my first choice because I bid realistically. This month, for next month, I should say, for November's lines, I bid, it was hard because I was trying to bid around my vacation. So I have no idea what I'm going to get. I bid for probably the 32 lines that did work around my schedule, my vacation, and then I bid for probably another 15 or 20 lines that allowed me to possibly move stuff around to accommodate my vacation a little better. So we'll see what happens. But so that's the answer. Great question. I think I'm starting to steam up my windows. People will get the wrong idea that something's happening here that's not. But Cat Tips asked me a question I get all the time. Who takes care of your cats when I'm away for work? Answer is nobody. Nobody takes care of my cats. My cats are fantastic by themselves. I think it's one of the benefits of them having been stray cats before they were house cats. So they really can take care of themselves. I have 2 gravity feeders, one each for the 2 cats and their preferred food in each of them. I have 2 other cat food bowls spread around the house. I've got 3 water fountains and 2 regular water bowls in case the power goes out. And I've got, do you know those IKEA under the bed storage boxes? They're gigantic. They're just giant, wide, but short plastic boxes with lids. Well, I have 3 of those with the lids removed as litter boxes. Yeah, so they never have to worry about having a clean spot to poop because they've got half an acre of litter boxes. I have lots of food, lots of water. They have access to windows with pigeons to look at, toys, and plenty, dozens of places to sleep and hang out and relax. Frequently, when I'm home, the cats sometimes don't want anything to do with me. They're off on their favorite perch for that afternoon, sleeping, resting. So they just do more of that when I'm gone than they would when I'm home. So they're fantastic. Another benefit of having cats, because they're really self-maintaining. You know, as long as they have their food, their water, their litter boxes, some toys, and some company. I would never have only one cat. They're perfectly fine without me. So the cats take care of themselves. All right, so Lark asked me to do a video on the topic of famous people that I've met while working on an aircraft. Unfortunately, I can't. I've never met anybody famous on board. The only person, I think, Flavor Flav, if you're old enough to remember Flavor Flav from MTV a million years ago. He was on our flight a while ago, a long time ago. But Wayne Newton again, you have to be an older person to know who I'm talking about. Wayne Newton was on one of our planes recently. A coworker of mine took care of him. And if you don't know him, he is called Mr. Las Vegas, I believe. If you remember seeing Ferris Bueller's Day Off, Donka Shane, darling, you know, that song, that's Wayne Newton. But yeah, he's famous with a small crowd. Yeah, that's it. The famous people I've met in real life were when I worked at Neiman Marcus in Boston, like Stevie Nicks, Stephen King, Mary Kate Olsen, before she went to rehab that first time, when she was on the cover of People magazine, she's wearing a pair of sunglasses. I sold those to her. That's the caliber of famous people I've met. Yeah, so I can't say I've met anybody famous on board. Sorry. Steven Tyler from Aerosmith. He was a customer of mine a number of times. He bought a lot of Kiehl's skincare back then, but he was unbelievable. What a nice guy. I just realized Stephen King, Stevie Nicks, and Steven Tyler. I got a lot of Stevens. Interesting. All right, so I eventually had to come home. I had spent way too much time at the Taco Bell parking lot. It's not a good look. So I had to come home, do a few last minute checks on my bags, make sure everything's charged, ready to go. Because the minute I wake up, I have to see if I can trim my hair if I have time. And then I have to run out the door to the airport. So I will see you later on tomorrow. Thank you for joining me on this little Q&A, and I will see you soon. Fly safe. Good night.